anything that we can do to build empathy is valuable. And I certainly have empathy for someone who struggles because they don't feel like they have a purpose because, what they were doing is not what they're doing anymore. And it's so easy to get our identity tied to what we do, right? That we become what we do. And that's not true. We aren't what we do. We aren't our job title.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm MT, and this is the Helen Mt Podcast. Helen and I have been going back and forth with our guest today, Christine Sperber, for the past 5 months. And finally, today, you will get to listen to our conversation with this incredible, amazing woman. So, Helen, what were your favorite parts of this conversation?
Besides all of it?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I think she's incredible. I think just even being in her presence and the way she articulates things, when she talks about the modern Elder Academy and the importance of being of service. And of course, wait till you see Speck at the end.
Cute,
wait till the end, like the cutest thing ever.
That big vicious dog.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about you? What were your favorite parts?
Oh, well, you know me, when anyone talks about their athleticism.
I know, that's your love language.
Oh, her excellence in snowboarding, the fact that she just was able to push herself to her limit to be that kind of athlete. Mm-hmm. I could talk about that for hours.
Yeah.
And what I really found interesting that I learned probably a little bit about myself and life is that she made reference to the VIP, a very important person, to becoming a PIP, a previously important person.
I know.
And I guess a lot of us go through that. And
I've never heard of that before.
Right? And I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And we can do that in anything.
Yeah.
So,
no, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit about her.
So Christine Sperber was a former World Cup snowboarder and serial entrepreneur, which is another very fascinating thing about her.
Yeah.
She's launched award-winning hotels, businesses, and groundbreaking ideas in sports, hospitality, and beyond. In workshops, participants often call her a badass for her boundless energy and ability to make things happen. And as co-founder of MEA, Christine helped bring Chip Conley's vision for the modern Elder Academy to life. She's a passionate activist and steward of the land, dedicated to creating transformative, life-changing experiences. So wherever she's involved, Christine brings fun, meaning, and humanity.
Yeah, and you'll get that. You'll get that sense of it in the show.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Okay, but before we get to the show and before you get to hear this incredible conversation, we just want to have a little word from our sponsor. Hey, it's Helen, and I am so excited to tell you about our new sponsor, Back to Earth Skin. Now, I love skincare, and I have tried everything out there, from the high-end and then to the drugstore brands. But that all changed about 1.5 years ago when I discovered Back to Earth Skin. Since then, I have been completely hooked. Back to Earth Skin is setting a whole new standard for natural skincare. They blend the best ingredients nature has to offer with a commitment to sustainability. So it's a win for your skin and for the planet. Their products are 100% natural, vegan, cruelty-free, and I can honestly say that my skin has never looked better. And what really makes Back to Earth Skin incredible is that they have this trademarked mineral microbiome clay. This rare natural clay is packed with over 40 minerals like magnesium, potassium, calcium, and zinc, minerals that are known to boost your skin health and leave your skin feeling hydrated and refreshed. So if you're ready to try skincare that's natural, affordable, effective, and kind to the earth, head to backtoearthskin.com. You get 15% off your first order, but make sure to use the code HTMT when you order, because that way you will receive 15% off your second order. Links to Back to Earth Skin are in the description of the podcast, and when you start to use this incredible product, your skin and the planet will thank you. Now, back to the show. Christine, we are so happy to finally be having this conversation with you. So thank you so much for joining us.
After all those emails and us bugging you, it's like, okay.
It's amazing to think we once lived in a world where you'd go to your friend's house and throw rocks at their window, and that was considered appointment making, right?
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or
Yeah.
don't you even find getting together? Like I remember, actually, MT and I spoke about this where I would just call up a friend and go, "Hey, you want to go to a movie
Yeah.
tonight?" And we can't do that anymore. Like everybody's just so
Schedules.
busy.
Yeah. I remember my first cell phone was
It's
like this
nuts.
big,
I do have a few drop-in friends.
which is
Yeah.
good. I do. I have drop-in people and my neighbors a lot, but and like you and I are a bit far.
Yeah, we're a bit far. Yeah. But we drop in calling each other all the
Yeah,
time.
all the time. Yeah.
So I really want to get into the work that you're doing, and MT and I really want to get into the work that you're doing with the Modern Elderly Academy. But we thought what we would start with is the fact that you were a world champion snowboarder.
Yes.
All right. Let's see. Let's revisit a little bit. It's Modern Elder Academy. So we feel there really is a very big difference between elder and elderly. So elder is circumstantial. If you're working in tech and you're in your late 20s, you can be the elder in the room. Elderly refers to the kind of end of life, right? Towards the end of our lives. It often is correlated with frailing. So elder is situational. Elderly is more a time in our life, generally towards the end and associated with frailing. So we are modern elders. And we feel like it's really important that we are able to uncouple those two terms because there's a big resistance to the word elder that we find, and the world needs elders, right? We're the keepers of wisdom. We are the ones that have experience. The world needs experience and wisdom now more than ever. And because culturally, so many of us have gotten away from a world where we treasure our elders, we've lost a lot of that emotional intelligence. So, Modern Elder Academy. And then I definitely was not a world champion. I was a World Cup halfpipe rider. And so that's the kind of the level that I competed on was World Cup, which was so much fun. And I got to do that in a time. It just feels like as I reflect, it seems like such an innocent time, right? Like more power to athletes these days. They get to kind of be their own mini branding agency if they're taking themselves seriously as a product. But we weren't, I mean, we were kind of products at that point, of course, but it wasn't all tracked by social media. It just felt more innocent and also a lot more free because, being in my 20s and traveling around the world with a bunch of other snowboarders, we definitely weren't always on our best behavior, and that has not been preserved on social media forever. And I am so very grateful for that.
Yeah. Christine, my biggest admiration is that you're an athlete and that you went so far in the sport. And I think for myself, if I had another chance for a different career, I would love to be an Olympic athlete. And I think my daughters were part of snowboarding for 25 years, or 20 years. And we did every weekend up north, and I can appreciate the sport. I always wore the snowboarding look on skis because I thought it was way cooler, more like the baggy look. But I just think the discipline, the commitment, and the endurance to be an athlete, especially in the cold, is outstanding.
Thank you. I mean, again, not only was the kind of marketing of us a more innocent and simple time, but I was really early on in the snowboard world. So when I look at these women today and what they're doing, like what we did as athletes, it just doesn't compare at all. So it was fun and we were pushing ourselves, but the arc of innovation has been just incredible. I'm in awe of what the female snowboarders are doing today. It's like almost a different sport. Yeah.
And the question is that nowadays as athletes are so focused on what they eat, the lung capacity and like the aura ring, all that stuff. Back then, were you that in tune with your body at that capacity with the intake and sleep, or you just kind of did it?
I mean, I think we probably believed en masse at that point in snowboarding that like as long as we mixed our vodka with Red Bull at night, we were good
Right.
in the morning, right? Like we'd had our
Yeah.
power drinks. It was um, as I aged in the sport, and I use aged, I was in my 20s. I certainly had to get more careful about taking care of my body. But again, the sophistication of the athletics today compared to like I had to start doing yoga because I was hurt, right? Um, and we certainly didn't know what we know now, or at least we didn't as a community. So I think there's been a massive evolution and sophistication that I'm so pleased I got to be in so early and be in such a pioneering time. And it feels like it's just a different world altogether.
Did you ever feel with it that I've met some people that are athletes, and with my photography, I photographed a few Olympians, and one of the things is they love where they've gotten, but it's such dedication, and it's almost like when other kids were going to parties or when other people were dating or even TV shows that were current, it's almost like they're a little bit stunted because everything was their sport. Did you ever find that for yourself? Was that challenging at all?
I mean, it was certainly so immersive. Everything was about snowboarding. I traveled with the same people. We did the same things. I kind of missed the Gulf War, right? Like, so current events fall away. There is a very single-mindedness to it. And then I think the big shock is being an ex-professional athlete. And that I had no preparation for this. I think it's one of the things that makes me suited for the work that we're doing at MEA now, because so many people who come to us, so the focus of MEA really is all around midlife transitions. And there's so much packed into this time in our lives that is transitional. I mean, it's hormonal, it's physical, it's situational, relationships are changing. We're having health diagnoses for the first time often. And the job change is really rocking. And what we find is so many people come to us looking for purpose because they've gone from, this is really funny, I think this is a Chipism, and my business partner Chip, we call him the what was Sarah Jessica Parker's character on Sex and the City? Do you remember her name? Can't believe it.
Miranda? Carrie.
No,
Oh, sorry.
Carrie Bradshaw. That he was the Carrie Bradshaw of El Pescadero, Mexico. Going from a VIP to a PIP, a previously important person.
Wow.
And I certainly felt that vacuum coming out of being a professional athlete where everything was about being in my body, progressing my sport, progressing my own evolution. And, there were times, and it's ridiculous, and this is an outlier, but like being in Japan, where snowboarding at that time was a very, very big deal, much bigger than it was in the US. And there was actually a day where I was unable to hike up the side of the half pipe because I was surrounded by kids who wanted my signature, right? They wanted my autograph on their clothes. And that wasn't normal. That wasn't the US. I wasn't treated that way in my everyday life. But, in a different culture where they were really revering snowboarders at that moment. But to go from that to PIP, I really felt that. So I have an empathy for that I can bring to the work at MEA when someone's been a CEO or they've been, a public figure and suddenly finding themselves with a bunch of time affluence. And, I think it's very, very easy to become addicted to being in demand. And so that's a huge change. Also goes with empty nest, right? Where you're demand, and suddenly it feels like purpose has gone away. So
everything you said it can go with so many other people, right? From other business owners that are not the high executive anymore, or in the fashion industry. But can you explain a little bit to our listeners what MEA is?
Absolutely. So we actually just rounded the corner on our 8th year in business, which is mind blowing to me. We've had over 6,000 people come through our programs, either in person or online, and we focus on midlife transitions. So we started from a place of Chip Conley, my business partner, my co-founder, that we don't have tools in schools to help shepherd us through this time of midlife that is so rife with transitions and really is so correlated to puberty, right? We go through our adolescence and people expect us to have all kinds of changes, and we've created structure for people to do that, right? And we don't expect adolescents to act like adults. We recognize that there is a space between childhood and adulthood. And as a society, we support that. Fast forward into midlife, and we're going through so many of those same kinds of changes. We're often doing it alone. In school, we've got a whole cohort, right? Everyone, I hope I'm allowed to say this, everyone's having wet dreams at the same time, for example, right? Like it's happening in a cohort. There is support. We're not alone. In midlife, so many of us have become siloed either from work or family, whatever our area of focus is. We're not going through these changes in a cohort. We're not going through it in community. And we certainly don't or didn't have tools in schools to support us through that time. So, we endeavored to create a place that helps us kind of unwind what are all these changes, recognize that we're not going through it alone, recognize that there are tools to help support us through, name what these changes are, and recognize that, there is support available to us and that this is very real.
Well, it's almost when you were saying about the identity of being this snowboarder or people having this identity and then it's no longer. And I think it's the same as we age, that we have this identity of whether it's youth, being a mother, being a business owner, and then there are shifts that happen. And whether we're empty nesters or maybe we're not in the same career or maybe we're in relationships that are shifting. And then that question, how do you transition through that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's so real, right? Like for me, I think one of the things that's made MEA work so well is that we're in it. We are in it. So it started with the three co-founders. It's Jeff Hamaway, Chip Conley, and myself. And Jeff has a young family. He changed careers. He dropped out of tech after 30 years of green supply chain innovation. He was looking for something different that allowed him to spend more time with his family, have a different quality of life. Shortly after we were founded, Chip was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which we've been on the prostate cancer journey with him since. He's doing really well now. But we often say that transitions actually begin with an ending. And so for Chip, that diagnosis was the ending of this period of good health, right? Or his perception of his body in one way, moving into another period. For me, I'm like going through all of it, right? I got divorced in April, so I'm part of the gray wave. I got divorced at 54. I had no idea what was going on with perimenopause or menopause. And so as an athlete, working out harder than I've ever worked out and not seeing the kind of results that I would expect that I'd always received, right? Sleeping terribly, headaches. Like I had no idea, brain fog. I'm trying to function at work in the same capacity that I always have, or even a higher capacity, because I've had decades of business experience and like struggling for words, right? So I'm in a place where my body's not responding the same way. My brain's not responding the same way. My relationship has changed. I'm kind of struggling at work. These are all the things that we talk about in midlife. So we are in it. We created a toolkit for ourselves and our friends. And I'm so thrilled to see that it's resonant really across the world at this point.
I'm curious what the toolkit is. I don't know if you were thinking that when you were talking about having this tool. Can you give us some tips on what the toolkit is?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many different things. I think probably the number one most surprising tool that I found, and maybe it shouldn't be surprising, and this reveals more about me and the fact that how little attention I've been paying my whole life, but community is such an incredible tool through midlife. There's a study that came out of Harvard in the 80s, so this is not new news by any means, but that the strength of our social connections in our 50s has impact into our 80s on our health and our lifespan. I mean, absolutely massive impacts, right? And again, I don't know how it was for you two in fashion, but for my friends who are in fashion, it feels so intense. And to come out of that, and again, I always think about it almost like, like meerkats, how they kind of like pick their heads up out of the hole and look around like, well, what is going on? Where are my friends? What has happened? So community is a massive tool. And what we see every week, so we do workshops in person. We do these live workshops, both in Baja, the southern part of Baja, Mexico, on the Pacific coast, And then in May, we opened here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I am today. So those are in-person workshops, and we also do them online. And what we find is that the connections that are formed over having these very real conversations about what this time of life is about is so powerful. And we often see people who come, show up for the workshops and they think they're not the right person for the workshop. They don't have enough to contribute, maybe because they weren't a CEO or, I often see it with women who raised families, and they think that because they don't have a business experience or they dropped out of professional life, that they don't have a contribution to make. And it is exactly the same to be an empty nester or to have sold a business. There's so many parallels. We have so much to learn from each other. So I find gathering people and having really deep conversations about what's going on in this time of life, we have so much to teach each other. So, I mean, that's just one of the tools. And in person, we have 5 days to go through an entire toolkit that's both classroom work and experiential. Online, depending on what course we have, we can spread it out over weeks and do even deeper work online and create connections with your cohort virtually. That's so powerful.
It's true. Community is so important because I value my social gatherings. There's like with groups of people, travel, dinners. I mean, but at times, and I have to kind of regress and say, okay, I just need some downtime. But when you're in this same age group, then you do things together, on your own or with couples or all girls. You leave feeling so fulfilled. And I mean, I'm older than you as well, but I mean, I find that I tend to get more youthful when I'm doing things with my community at my age.
Yeah.
There's also that with community, it's also knowing that we're not alone and that our struggles, they're not unique to us. And there's something in that me too. So if it's like I'm really struggling with getting old, or I'm struggling with the weight that I'm gaining, or I'm struggling that my kids aren't at home and I miss them, somebody else is going to be like, I know, I feel that too. And there's a comfort in that, knowing that it's not just us.
Absolutely. I will take all the validation I can take anytime. I'm like a validation junkie.
No,
I think you're awesome.
Right. That's a good point. No, it's a good point, Helen. It's true. And, it's as an athlete that you are, like, I actually think of this sometimes when I'm at the gym and I go hard. Like I'm there and I'm hardcore.
She couldn't sit down in the chair today because she worked out so hard.
My quads are sore, but I do it daily. But I every workout for me is like my last. I don't save juice in the tank. And I'm doing it. And this happened to me like last week. And I'm saying to myself, I'm 57. Am I going to be doing this in my 60s? Like, why am I going so hard now, or so into like the muscle, the right, combination of weights? And I'm thinking, like, how long is this going to last?
As long as you love it. As long as you love it.
But I forget when I'm at the gym, I don't look at myself at 57. I mean, physically, yeah, but I don't think of myself as I'm a 57-year-old doing all these things.
One of my very best friends in the world and biggest inspirations is a woman named Monique Merrill. And she's an endurance athlete. She has mercifully taken her foot off the gas at this point because she discovered surfing, and we can't get her to do endurance stuff anymore, at least race anymore. She is an incredible surfer. She's spending lots of time in Costa Rica and Panama with her family surfing. She used to be like, eye roll. Who would ever go on a beach vacation? That sounds like the most boring thing. And then she paddled out into big waves and was like, okay, this is incredible. But when she was doing endurance races, like she did the Raid, she used to do all the, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of that series, races that last a week where you're actually wayfinding and you're out in the field for a week and very little sleep. And I said to her once, we lived in Breckenridge, Colorado together. So we're at altitude. And I said, how do you pace yourself for a 6-hour run? I don't even understand how one would pace themselves to go out for that long. And she looked at me like I was nuts. And she said, Well, I just pretend I'm being chased by a bear for 6 hours.
For 6 hours? Okay. No, I'll be pretend I'm being chased by a turtle for 6 hours.
Well, I think you two could work out together.
Yeah,
from the
right?
sounds of
Oh,
it.
yeah. Oh my God. Like, yeah, but they say everything you learn about yourself, you learn in marathon 26 miles. So when you're doing that solitude endurance, you're just thinking. You strip yourself apart, you get into your soul, you come up with solutions. And for you, I mean, look at from that to, I mean, do you think being an athlete led you to MEA because of the PIP stage that you mentioned that you were in?
I think that it helps. I think, anything that we can do to build empathy is valuable. And I certainly have empathy for someone who struggles because they don't feel like they have a purpose because, what they were doing is not what they're doing anymore. And it's so easy to get our identity tied to what we do, right? That we become what we do. And that's not true. We aren't what we do. We aren't our job title.
Yeah.
And it's almost the work that you're doing, it sort of gives people more agency for their own life and how they want to live it and how they want to sort of move forward, which I think is really
Absolutely.
important, because there's so much information out there and it's not a, one solution fits all. It's finding what works for you and holding that space. Because we have Jill who introduced us to you where when she did the courses where she said there was a part of it where you're making bread. And she was like, what the fuck? Making bread? And she said that was actually where she learned the most. And I don't know if you want to talk about, I don't know what the bread thing is, but it's just that it's interesting the work that you're doing because it helps people feel like they, again, that word agency of how they want to age, how they want to move forward.
First of all, Jill is the Mac. I love that woman. She is so incredible. And the fact that she talked about bread on here, just warms my heart. So bread is actually part of our experiential education and the workshops in Baja, and an exercise that I designed to help people play, to help people. It's an invitation to be a beginner. So often at MEA, we talk about this kind of comfort trap, right? And there's this work of a man called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, a Hungarian scientist, who said that flow state happens at this perfect intersection of challenge and skill, right? And when we're in that flow state, whether it's on a snowboard or a surfboard or at work or raising your children or reading, whatever it is, we kind of lose sense of self and enter into this timelessness. It's this incredibly focused period. And, people have gone further with this work and said there's actually health benefits to us to be in this flow state, and we can hack into this flow state, which is really interesting, right? Stephen Forrest does a lot of work around this. I think I just got that name wrong. Anyway, so what happens to so many of us as we age, as we get really good at doing things, is that we are less likely to challenge ourselves for whatever reason, right? I think because we've gotten good, we've gotten consistently rewarded for being good at something. Our dignity becomes kind of tied to it, and we lose the impulse to be a beginner. Also, there's a fear of failure, of looking ridiculous. So the idea with bread is that we could create a way for people to be a beginner in a very, very low impact way. Like, if people burn the bread at MEA, if it's the worst bread that's ever been made on the face of the earth, it really doesn't matter. That said, every week I see people absolutely gripped that they have to get this bread thing exactly right? Because we're so used to delivering. And we hold ourselves to these standards, and we all get trapped in all our shoulds. So really, part of the toolkit is creating invitations to be a beginner, invitations to play. And we find our own resistance to doing new things through that.
That's interesting. But, and when you're saying that there's more fear at our age, do you think the fear comes from an insecurity because of our age? That we're too old to do it, or too old now to start?
I think there's there's things that happen in parallel. there's certainly an inner voice for many of us that I'm too old to learn something new, which is crazy. If you think about, from the math, from 18 to 50 is the same amount of time as 50 to 80, right? Or 20 to 50, 50 to 80. I'm not great at math. I was two years off there, but 30 years. And at 18, you would never say, I'm too old to learn something. You think about all the things you used from 18 to 50, right? Never, ever did you think that wasn't worth learning at 18 or at 20. And 50 to 80 is the same jump. It's the same length of time. So, part of it is that inner narrative, and it kind of gets beaten into us through ageism, that we're too late to learn something. So that's kind of happening in one parallel. And then the other is, I do think that we become more rigid as we become accustomed to being good at things. We're less likely to put ourselves in the place where we don't know. We're less likely to put ourselves in beginner, because if on that same idea, that same flow chart, if that perfect place in the middle of skill and challenge is flow, when we're in a place of too much challenge that we don't have the skill to meet, that's where we're in panic or anxiety. And so we work to keep ourselves out of that place quite actively often, and it keeps us from exploring.
I was talking to MT. I grabbed my phone because I wanted to make sure I got her name right. She wrote a book called Not Too Late, Gwendolyn Bounds.
I have to read that book.
Okay, so I think I found her through your newsletter about books to read, the MEA newsletter. But she talks about what you're saying is that it's not too late.
Yeah.
And what happens as we age, it's almost like we get up.
Yeah.
We,
routine
take the
becomes
kids
safe.
to school, routine. And she talks about how she started doing Spartan racing, or Spartan, I don't know what it's called, and how it changed everything for her. And having those things that are challenging, that it sort of ripples down and it changes like the mundane. And that I've just started listening to her book, but what I'm getting out of it is, which I think both of you, because you're both athletes, of that, how when you tap into that, it almost opens up another part of you. And it's something that you're inspiring yourself. And there is no end to it. It's ongoing what you can do with it.
That's, interesting. She's definitely felt that, right?
Yeah.
So, but I wonder if her going into the Spartan, is it a sport?
Well, Spartan, what do they call it? Like, there's Tough Mudder.
Okay, so I get it. Yeah.
The Spartan races.
But again, it comes back to what Christine said, that she has a community to do it with, right, as well, which is another, that probably adds to her confidence to start doing this. It's never too late.
Yeah. But it is interesting how it's all this tapestry. It's all connected. It's not one thing. It's everything.
Yeah. We've got to just keep trying, right? We just have to keep trying new stuff and pushing and learning how to build community, which is very challenging for many people. Building community and making friends in midlife can feel very overwhelming. Absolutely.
Could you share with us some stories, I don't want to say success stories, but sort of some of the transitions that you've witnessed with people?
Sure. Absolutely. It's such an honor to be able to see people transition well. Right? To come and to spend the time with us, whether it's in person or online, to really metabolize what they've done and who they are and where they want to go, and then have the opportunity to be intentional to choose what we do with this longevity bonus that we've been given, right? We're living 30 years longer than we used to. Every once in a while when I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but every once in a while I get really frustrated about the state of women's healthcare and the very little information that was available to me before perimenopause and menopause, and how grateful I am now that world really seems to be opening up, as so many doctors our age, female doctors our age, are coming through this period and going okay, I didn't have any training. I need to know more about what's going on. I need to serve my clients better, or my patients better. And then I think, well, gosh, we just didn't live that long past menopause for a while, right? So it is new. And that kind of helps temper some of my disappointment. So what have I seen? We often say, we can help people to repurpose their lifetime of experience. So if we spend time thinking about like, what really is my mastery? What is it? Right? Okay, there's my title, and that's one thing, and it's very easy to get hung up on, and my identity to get hung up on my title. But really, what are the roots of the mastery in that title? And then how can I repurpose that? And we often see people becoming very powerful mentors. We also see people moving into entirely different lines of work, or entrepreneurism, or volunteering, or exploration that had nothing to do with what they did as a younger person, but maybe there was some thread of interest that came even through like their teen years all the way through that had to get put on a back shelf. We have a woman in our community who I absolutely love and admire, who was always loved cooking, but ended up in tech, working in corporate for a long time, still would cook for her friends, and had a chance to kind of really take that deep breath and think about what she really wanted to do with the rest of her life. And she's been volunteering with Chef Andres in the World Kitchen and doing relief work all over the world. And she just glows. I mean, and there's nothing easy about what she's doing. You know, she's in Ukraine, she's seeing horrible things, and yet still this level of satisfaction, I think, that she takes in doing something that really sparks her is so inspiring to be around. Her name's Laura Polly. I think everyone in our community looks up to her at this point. So World Central Kitchen.
Can I ask, did you guide her into any of the connections to get her to that, or just give her the tool, like your word tools like you use, to reach out to that position?
I think through the work that we do, we help people ask really great questions of themselves, right? I would never presume that I know what anyone else should do with their lives, right? But I can help people. We can, through this curriculum that we've created and the container that we've created for people to talk to each other, to help mine themselves for these great answers. And it's always going to be a better answer than somebody trying to install a solution for you.
Interesting. And I
love that.
Yeah, right. And you have trips booked.
Yeah.
Like you do retreats.
Yeah, well, those are our in-person workshops. But
they're over a span of a few days.
Yep, they're 5 days long. And so the kind of the deep dive that we do is a 5-day long retreat, either in Baja or in Santa Fe. And those are either a core workshop. So we have 3 pillars of our work, and that's navigating transition, finding purpose, and owning wisdom. So we do these 5-day workshops around one of each of those titles. And we have an entire faculty that delivers those workshops. We also do guest faculty workshops, and those divide into thought leaders, or they're just people who've been pushing research on something that's fascinating to us in midlife, or they're super luminaries, right? So the thought leaders would be like an author who's writing about Arthur Brooks, for example, From Strength to Strength, comes and will teach with us. That's incredible. Or Father Richard Rohr comes and teaches with us. Such an incredible honor to host these thought leaders. And then we also have these super luminaries who come, who I think so many of us have seen through our lives and are inspired by, whether it's Michael Franti or Elizabeth Gilbert from Eat, Pray, Love fame, who comes and spends a week with us. And when we're in those guest faculty workshops, we're weaving kind of our foundational MEA work together with whatever it is that they have to teach. And it varies so wildly, but it's always resonant for our community. So either a core workshop or guest faculty workshop, in person, in Baja or Santa Fe. I do hope we'll take it on the road at some point, but we haven't quite developed those trips just yet. But stand by, because I think it's ripe for the taking. We'd love to do that.
Yeah.
When Elizabeth Gilbert, when she speaks, it's like poetry to your soul. Like have you heard her speak?
No.
Oh my gosh, the way she uses language to articulate and express thoughts and feelings it just goes right into your soul.
I couldn't say it any better than that. It's incredible. I was transfixed being in the room with her. She teaches with a woman called Dr. Tara Trent, who is just an absolute powerhouse. And if you haven't seen her work, I can't recommend highly enough that you check out Dr. Tara Trent's work. And they most often teach together these days. So Elizabeth and Dr. Trent invited a room of like 50 people. They put cards on the seats and they said, just, write what you'd like to talk about on a card. And they threw these cards into a basket and they just pulled cards and then riffed, the two of them, on these topics, everything from like purpose to, serendipity to, and with a lifetime to rehearse, I never could have been as lucid as the two of them. Like the depth and the thoughtfulness and the intelligence and the soul in everything the two of them had to say off the cuff was just like, those moments when you're in the presence of something really special and like that, hair kind of stands up all over your body. Being around the two of them is like that for me.
Wow.
And it's so genuine because it is, like you said, off the cuff.
Yeah.
That it's just not rehearsed.
Well, I find when we speak from our soul too, like I don't know if you find this, but I think when we speak our truth and from the soul is that sometimes people go, oh my God, say that again. And you're like, I don't know what I said. Because you're just so in the moment in your truth, right? It's not rehearsed. It's not like you're reading something that somebody else has said.
Yeah. And like we talked about, I'm better when I don't rehearse things. I want to say things organically. I want to go with the flow of a conversation. It's just feels more normal.
How important is being of service, not only to you, but what you teach to people?
It's such a perfect follow-on question from talking about Elizabeth Gilbert, because so many people seem to ask her about purpose. And when I've been with her, always says it's really about service. She says she wakes up every day saying, how can I be of service today? And I don't think it has to be like, all capital letters in neon service. We don't have to go and change the entire world. She tells the story about how she was at a wedding and a woman needed a ride to the train station. And it wasn't like the perfect timing for her to go to the train station, but that's what that woman needed in that moment, and how beautiful it felt to be able to be generous in that moment, right? Made all the difference for that woman. So God, imagine a world where we all approach thinking, how can I be of service in this situation?
And service is huge because it also adds to your self-worth. Like it gives you not self-worth, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like a purpose. Like as you get older, you tend to lose, what is my purpose? What is it? The service part of it gives you that confidence that I can do something.
We have, though, seen the idea that we need to go into service when after retirement or whatever is a bit of a trap. It is something that we have to be careful for, because I've seen very successful people come through MEA who think that their next step should be some kind of service project because they've been given so much and they have to give back. And that's a beautiful impulse. But if it creates a truncated thinking, if it's the only thing that I can do is go to nonprofit after a big career, I have to either be on a nonprofit board, I have to give back in a certain way. Find anything that limits thinking, that stunts thinking, can be too limiting. So yes, service is great. We want to be of service to each other. We need each other, but there's a light and a dark to everything. And the idea of service in retirement really can be a trap, right? We had a man come through who had absolutely massive career in healthcare and had retired really well, felt an impulse to give back, and thought there was this only one very narrow prescribed way to do it. And after really thinking through and realizing how this one path felt so small, he found another way, a different way that absolutely lit him up, that served the world in an entirely different capacity and is so much more valuable because he's going to bring all kinds of authentic energy and joy to it. And the need was not any less, but he had to get out of this prescribed idea of like, I've been a CEO. Now I need to be on a nonprofit board. Now, it's just any of this prescribed thinking can be danger.
Yeah. And that's the little things like I found right now with the fires that are going on in LA and just the world right now. It seems it's a hard place right now. But even that, like I know MT and I, like we do our little check-ins, or I've had a couple of girlfriends call me and going like, I just feel really sad. And I'm like, I know. And what I would say is like be of service. And that can be just smile at someone when you get your coffee from them. Hold the door open, ask someone like, how are you? Like those little things, it's like the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be these big grandiose things. It can just be that simple act of kindness.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's ever been a greater call for need for civility in the world than right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think our personalities that we're always like that.
Yeah.
So it's not like, with Helen and I, we're always acting out of kindness.
But even you, the other day, I sent her a text going, I'm feeling really vulnerable. And 2 seconds later, the phone rings. She goes, what is it? What can I do?
Yeah.
And it's but having that person too, that you can be that open and honest with is a real gift.
I think so. And I think when, if as a friend who needs you or expresses something like that, hey, I'm not the Queen of England where I don't have time to call you. I'll stop in my tracks and say, this person needs me.
Yeah.
The voice is better.
Before we start to say goodbye to you, could you give the story of your little dog?
Oh, what story?
I know. That's why you got to hear the story.
Yeah. All right. So first, we'd have him show up. So this is Speck.
Deal with him. He's so cute.
Speck is 3 pounds. He is a dwarf Chihuahua. So like there is dwarfism in humans, there's dwarfism in canines. So it's he weighs 3 pounds. So he's 1.2 kilos. He was 500 grams when he was given to me by Saul, our shaman, who is on staff in Baja. He's a dear friend of mine. And Saul brought him to me maybe like the 3rd or 4th week that we were open at MEA, which is like anyone who's lived through startup time knows that is absolute chaos. The first few years felt like just endless work hours. So he came in and he handed me this tiny little bundle of a dog and said,
look at him.
Here you go. He said, you need this energy. And he just he put Speck on my chest and held him there and looked into my eyes. And then he went, okay then, and walked away. And I was like, wait, what just happened? What just happened? You just handed me a 500-gram being. And so Speck was quite sick, actually. He went into lots of hypoglycemic comas when I first got him, and I figured out how to keep him alive because I'd worked, in Baja. I lived in Baja for about 13 years and only moved up to New Mexico about 2 years ago to get us open here in the US. I will move back to Mexico. I love it there. But in Baja, we did lots of spay and neuter clinics to try to help with the animal population down there. And I volunteered in them, and I often worked in the recovery room. So when the animals come out of surgery, you're monitoring them for signs that they come, that they're breathing on their own again. And once they're breathing on their own again, you remove the breathing tube, you give them lots of love and clean them up while they're under. But one of the things that we have to do is continue to check. You check their gums to see what color, right? If they're good in pink, are they getting enough oxygen? And if they're not coming back quickly, you can take caro syrup or honey and rub it on the gums of the dog, and it brings them back. That jolt of sugar is enough to kind of bring them out of anesthesia sometimes or move it along. So when Speck was having his seizures and having hypoglycemic comas, I found him unresponsive. And my first reaction was this kind of, I don't know, animalistic. I've been here before with animals that aren't responsive. I grabbed honey, put on his gums, and he came back. So for about 3 weeks, I was putting honey on his gums every 20 minutes or so. And the vet in Mexico couldn't believe that I kept him alive, but he's alive. He's
Look at that.
7 now.
He's 7.
Oh, we got
And how special was Speck? How special is Speck now during your divorce?
Oh, this little guy goes almost everywhere with me. It's funny because I'm a single mom now, right? So we had a dog pack, and the two big girls, there's a 90-pound pit bull and a 100-pound German Shepherd, moved back down to Baja with my ex-husband. And this little guy stayed with me. He used to run those two big dogs.
I bet.
This guy was
Wow.
in charge of everybody. So, now he has to come to all the workshops with me, and he's adjusting.
Is his middle name Honey?
No, but it should be.
It should
Yeah.
be.
Speck Honey.
Yeah.
Mm.
Aw.
But
You know, MT,
yeah.
I'm like,
I know.
I feel like you have been of service to
I
us
don't want
today.
this to end, but
Yeah.
I do have to comment on your braid because I feel that is a go-to hairstyle for snowboarding. And that you took that from your
Absolutely.
snowboarding days. I know because my daughters used to do it. And I used to see it always on the slopes. I thought, you still have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know I'll ever get away from it. And I have friends who are really talented hairstylists and operators, and they always want to cut my hair. And I'm like, okay, you can do whatever you want as long as I can still braid it. And I had one friend that was like, how old are you? How old? You still braid your hair? And I'm like, I still braid
You
it.
know, it's the first thing I
no,
noticed.
that's ancient. No,
yeah.
you keep doing
Hey,
that. It's like
that-
saying, right,
yeah,
that
that's
you
like-
can't have long hair if you're getting older.
yeah.
It's like, do whatever you want.
Yeah. No, anyway, I love it
Yeah.
because
Thank
Yeah.
you.
yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
As long as it's stuck out of the
Yeah.
helmet, then you're good.
Well, one of the
Yep.
things that we heard that you with the bio is that you're a badass, but you're a good badass. Like yeah. So you can keep that badass braid.
One more question I have before.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you do now to maintain your athleticism to give you some sanity?
Oh my gosh. Well, interesting question, because I think it's today I'm 7 weeks out from a total hip replacement. So I can be back on snow February 20th, which I actually will not be on snow that day because I will be in Baja leading a workshop with Tim Parr of Caddis, which if you guys haven't had him on, unbelievable, man. Caddis so he found that he needed readers and he was like, my only choice is to get these terrible looking things at the pharmacy. No way. I've got style. We can do better than this. And so he's created this line of readers and glasses that are so stunning, and has kind of his movement is like age awesome. Like, why wouldn't we age awesome? So I'll be in Baja with Tim Parr of Caddis.
Well, hook us up with him. That would be
yeah.
great.
He's fantastic. But as soon as I'm back from that workshop, I will be back on snow. So I'm in some pretty intense PT right now. I definitely lost some of my athleticism before the surgery. And I was originally diagnosed with a labral tear. And so thought I had to ease up because I have damage and I don't want to make that damage worse. And then when I found out that I wasn't eligible for a labral tear repair, that I needed the full hip replacement, which was like one of the most shocking phone calls of my life. So I thought, oh, you've got the wrong person. There's no way. I'm 54. I don't need a hip replacement. I was able to kind of scale up a little bit more, but now, I'm back on it. I'm doing my PT and I can't wait to get back
on the snow is your thing.
full. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did 2 weeks ago, I was able to, I hope my surgeon doesn't ever hear this, but 2 weeks ago I got out on a mountain bike ride on dirt, on trails, and rode for over an hour and felt fantastic.
Wow.
Good
So it's been a little
for
too
you.
cold here to do that for the last few weeks, but
Wow.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well,
love
you
it.
definitely are inspiring, and thank you
Right back at you,
so
too. Thank you
much
so
for
much.
being here with us, and for your little guy there too. It kind of like that was
Speck,
very
it's
sweet,
great.
Speck. And people want to find out more about MEA. It'll be in our show notes, so people can find that out. And you also said that if people they can do it online too. So if people can't afford to go traveling to do it or can't take that time, they can do it online, which is really incredible too.
Yeah. And you're in 60 countries?
We have alumni from over 60 countries at this point. We have over 60 chapters right now in our alumni association. So we do have people all over the world.
I want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should.
Come.
Let's do
You guys
it.
come
Let's
do
do
it.
it.
I'm doing a workshop in I should know exactly when this in March 24th, I think it starts, with Maria Bello. And she's bringing Donna Karen and her friends. They had created a movement called the Midlife Midwives. And so we'll be spending 5 days in Baja talking about midlife midwives with Maria Bello and Donna Karen.
That's
and me.
incredible.
5 days in luxury. Our food is amazing. We have 3 acres of
back?
beachfront in Baja.
I am actually on a big project in Toronto, March 24th to 26th.
Well, we'll figure it out. We'll look at
if you have one between June and November.
Absolutely. We've got October 13th through 20th, I believe it is. I'm doing a workshop with Dr. Suzanne Gilbert-Lenz, who is an OBGYN from Beverly Hills, who's also an Ayurvedic doctor, who is also a breast cancer survivor and herself is in menopause and had to really figure out protocols for her best health and her patients' best health through these transitions. She's unbelievably knowledgeable, such a well-trained clinician who also has kind of more holistic look at health and happiness. She's an incredible person to spend a week with. So there's that one. That's in Santa Fe, October 13th through 20th. But go online. We've got a whole array of things. And I want to hang out with the two of you in person. So let's figure out.
Okay. And Santa Fe is one of my most favorite places. Maybe we'll come visit you in Santa Fe.
I'll do that.
It's incredible here.
It is incredible. It is incredible. Lots of love. Oh. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And
I don't want this to end, but we
Yeah. Thank you so much again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So thank you for sharing a bit of your day with us. We so appreciate you listening or watching. And remember to be you, because you are perfect just the way you are. Until next time.